You're watching NBC 12, a First Coast news station.
You're watching ABC 25, your First Coast news.
This is Television 12 News. Sports with Walt Dunbar. Weather with Dave McLaughlin. And news editor Eric Anderson.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Underwood Jewelers, Jacksonville's oldest quality jewelers. Now, here's Eric Anderson.
Good evening. Among our stories tonight,
The following program is telecast in stereo on TV 12.
This is TV 12's Action News Evening with Ernie Mastriani, Mary Stewart, Ray Boylan, and Rock Rote.
Good evening. Ernie has the night off.
The following program is telecast in stereo on TV 12. This is TV 12's Action News Tonight with Mary Stewart, Gary Nelson, Ray Boylan, and Rock Rote.
good evening. It's good to have you with us. The Jacksonville Transportation Authority has come under a lot of fire recently.
This is the News on 12 with Marsha Ladendorf and Lee Webb.
Good evening. The mayor says it sounds great.
WTLV TV 12, Jacksonville.
Making good things happen for the First Coast, this is tonight's News on 12 with Marsha Ladendorf, Lee Webb, meteorologist Tim Deegan, and Harmon Wages with sports.
I'll just buy 2 or 3 tickets every time.
This is 12 at noon, the First Coast fastest growing television news with Sally Fox, Richard Rogers, and Steve Smith weather. The news starts now.
Good afternoon. We're 12 hours past the deadline and still no war.
WTLV 12, Jacksonville. Thanks to you, the First Coast fastest growing television news. This is the News on 12 with Lee Webb, Marsha Ladendorf, John Lawrence with sports, and meteorologist Tim Deegan. The news starts now.
The man in the stretcher is 36-year-old Thomas Root, an attorney from Shelby, Ohio. He is listed in critical condition, but considering what he's been through today, he is lucky to be alive.
Good evening.
From TLV 12, your 24-hour news source, with Sally Fox and Steve Smith with weather. This is 12 at noon.
The rides are going up, the stuffed animals are being unloaded, and you can smell it in the air. Corn dogs, cotton candy. Almost time for the Greater Jacksonville Agricultural Fair.
From TLV 12, your 24-hour news source, with Lee Webb, Jeannie Blaylock, and meteorologist Tim Deegan. This is First News on 12.
9 people are dead and more than 200 others are hurt in Los Angeles.
You're watching tonight's News on 12 with Lee Webb, Marsha Ladendorf, meteorologist Tim Deegan, Life Watch with Jeannie Blaylock, and Dan Hicken with sports.
From your 24-hour news source, this is a special edition of the News on 12.
Good afternoon. I'm Donna Hicken with a special Super Bowl.
From TLV 12, your 24-hour news source with Jeannie Blaylock, Steve Abrams, meteorologist Tim Deegan, and Dan Hicken with sports. This is 12 News at 6.
In golf, they say when it's breezy, swing easy.
From TLV 12, your 24-hour news source, this is 12 News Tonight. You're watching 12 News Tonight with Steve Abrams, Donna Hicken, meteorologist Tim Deegan, and Dan Hicken.
From 12 News, your First Coast news leader. Good Morning Jacksonville, Saturday. From 12 News, your First Coast news leader, with Clennon King, Charlene Shirk, and meteorologist Brad Nitz. This is Good Morning Jacksonville, Saturday. From 12 News, your First Coast news leader. This is 12 News at 5:30. From 12 News, your First Coast news leader. This is your First News at 5 with Jeannie Blaylock and Donna Hicken. Phil Amato, Tim Deegan with your first forecast, and Dan Hicken with your sports report. From 12 News, your First Coast news leader. This is your First News at 5 with Jeannie Blaylock and Donna Hicken. Phil Amato, Tim Deegan with your first forecast, and Dan Hicken with your Jaguars report. From 12 News, your First Coast news leader, with Jeannie Blaylock, Albert Zipp, Chief Meteorologist Tim Deegan, and Dan Hicken with sports. This is 12 News at 6. From 12 News, your First Coast news leader. This is 12 News Tonight with Steve Abrams, Donna Hicken, Chief Meteorologist Tim Deegan, and Dan Hicken with sports. From 12 News, your First Coast news leader with Deanna Fidei, meteorologist Brad Nitz, and Mike Arford with sports. This is 12 News at 11. From 12 News, your First Coast news leader with Deanna Fidei, meteorologist Brad Nitz, and Dan Hicken with Sports Final. This is 12 News at 11.
Live. This is ABC 25 News at 5.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Bruce Hamilton.
And I'm Karen Adams. First at 5, a 14-year-old boy.
Live from ABC 25, Bruce Hamilton, Karen Adams. First Alert Weather with Brian Albrecht. And Sports Blitz with Rick Renner. You're watching ABC 25 News.
You're watching 12 News, your First Coast news leader. This is Good Morning Jacksonville.
Police in Washington are still looking for us.
You're watching 12 News, your First Coast news leader. With Jeannie Blaylock, Alan Shanae, 12 on your sides, Ken Amaro, Chief Meteorologist Tim Deegan, and Dan Hicken Sports. This is 12 News at 6. Stay up for 12 at 11. 12 minutes of non-stop news, weather, and sports is starting right now.
He became a millionaire in a matter of minutes, but Philip Johnson didn't win the lotto. He stole and kidnapped to get his money.
You're watching the Emmy Award-winning 12 News, your First Coast news leader. With Donna Hicken, Alan Shanae, Chief Meteorologist Tim Deegan, and Dan Hicken with your Jaguars report. This is 12 News at 11.
Hometown boy.
Stay up for 12 at 11. 12 minutes of non-stop news, weather, and sports is starting right now.
We have a go for main engine start. 4.
You're watching 12 News, your First Coast news leader. With Deanna Finet, meteorologist Jennifer Lopez, sports director Dan Hicken, and Jeff Prosser with Sunday Sports Final. This is 12 News at 11.
The Consumer Product Safety.
Live. This is ABC 25 Today.
Hey, welcome to...
Live from ABC 25. Kim Chapman. First Alert Weather with Steve Gary. You're watching ABC 25 Today.
Good morning, everybody. It's 5:41 on...
Live. This is ABC 25 News at noon.
Good afternoon. I'm Rob Harleston.
Live from ABC 25. Rob Harleston. First Alert Weather with Steve Gary. You're watching ABC 25 News at noon. Live. This is ABC 25 News at 5.
First at 5, the big show is taking off, and on board is plenty.
Put on your seat.
Live from ABC 25. Keith Coons, Donna Savarese, First Alert Weather with Chief Meteorologist Brian Albrecht, and Sports Blitz with Barry LeBrock. You're watching ABC 25 News at 5. This is ABC 25 News at 6.
You send your children to school to learn.
Live from ABC 25. Bruce Hamilton, Karen Adams, First Alert Weather with Chief Meteorologist Brian Albrecht, and Sports Blitz with Barry LeBrock. You're watching ABC 25 News at 6. Live. This is ABC 25 Tonight.
We send our children.
Live from ABC 25. Bruce Hamilton, Karen Adams, First Alert Weather with Chief Meteorologist Brian Albrecht, and Sports Blitz with Barry LeBrock. You're watching ABC 25 Tonight. Live. This is ABC 25 Nightcast. Live from ABC 25. Bruce Hamilton, Karen Adams, First Alert Weather with Chief Meteorologist Brian Albrecht, and Sports Blitz with Barry LeBrock. You're watching ABC 25 Nightcast.
You're watching 12 News, your First Coast news. With Patricia Crosby and Steve Smith's weather. This is 12 News at noon.
Good afternoon. I'm Patricia Crosby. Hope you're having a happy St. Patrick's today.
You're watching 12 News, your First Coast news. With Jeannie Blaylock, Alan Genet, Chief Meteorologist Tim Deegan, and 12 on your sides, Ken Amaro. This is 12's First News at 5.
Well, one fantastic finish in the NCAA tournament.
From your First Coast News, this is 12 News at 6.
New information in the case is being built against a kidnapping.
12 minutes of non-stop news and weather is starting right now.
Now, the news continues. This is First Coast News at 6.
When you call 911, you want the dispatcher to be alert and respond quickly.
Covering your news with the area's largest television news gathering team. This is NBC 12, your First Coast News at 6. With Jeannie Blaylock, Alan Janae, Ken Amaro on your side, Dan Hicken Sports, and Tim Deegan with your First Coast weather.
He's 7 years old and he has a pretty...
First in digital, first in high definition, you're watching NBC 12. And this is your First Coast News at 11. With Charlene Shirk, Jeff Prosser Sports, and Betsy Kling with your dual Doppler weather. This is ABC 25, your First Coast News at 5.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alan Janae.
And I'm Jeannie Blaylock. Tonight, another round of thunderstorms.
With the most accurate forecast from the only weather team with 2 storm-tracking Doppler radars. This is ABC 25, your First Coast News at 5. With Jeannie Blaylock, Alan Janae, Ken Amaro on your side, and Tim Deegan with your First Coast weather.
All right, the Bear Watch continues on
the most reporters on the street and the most resources in the newsroom. This is ABC 25, your First Coast News at 5:30. With Donna Hicken, Phil Amato, Dan Hicken with sports, and Tim Deegan with your First Coast weather.
Here's a look downtown from our South Bank campus.
This is ABC 25, your First Coast News at 7.
Investigators searched the home of a jailed high school.
With the most reporters on the street and the most resources in the newsroom, this is ABC 25, your First Coast News at 7. With Karen Adams, Mark Spain, and Cliff Michelson with your First Coast weather.
A Tampa truck driving school accused of handing out
This is ABC 25, your First Coast News at 11. Watching your news leaders.
Jeannie Blaylock,
Alan Janae,
Ken Amaro,
Dan Hicken, Tim Deegan.
This is First Coast News at 6.
Okay, ladies, prepare to be jealous.
You're watching your news leaders.
Donna Hicken,
Alan Janae, Tim Deegan, Dan Hicken.
This is First Coast News at 11. You're watching your news leaders.
Phil Amato,
Donna Hicken,
Tim Deegan.
This is First Coast News at 5:30. You're watching your news leaders.
Jeannie Blaylock,
Shannon Ogden, Ken Amaro,
Tim Deegan.
This is First Coast News at 5.
From the Information Center of First Coast News, your news leader.
U.S. troops now marching the streets of Haiti as mobs of angry survivors steal whatever they can. Meanwhile, the Obama administration taps a First Coast nonprofit to help rebuild the earthquake-ravaged nation.
And it's going to be a massive undertaking. Job creation, building houses, building schools, education.
This is First Coast News at 5.
Good evening, I'm Jeannie Blaylock.
And I'm Shannon Ogden. Thanks for joining us tonight at 5. Don't go away. First Coast News at 6 starts right now.
From the Information Center of First Coast News, your news leader.
Everything is just ashes.
A fire victim says the Jacksonville Fire and Rescue Department could have done more to save his home and pets.
And if they'd have had water when they first got here, it'd been a kitchen fire. And I could have saved at least 3/4 of my trailer.
An exclusive look inside the relief efforts from NAS JAX to help people in Haiti.
Getting stuff into that airport has just been impossible. I mean, the port's clobbered, the airports are clobbered. It's just mass chaos.
First Coast News is with the military as it sends aid to the island nation.
This is First Coast News at 6.
Good evening.
Information Center of First Coast News, your news leader.
New at 11, the mother and brother of Oscar-winning actress Jennifer Hudson shot to death in Chicago. And right now, an intense search is on for Hudson's 7-year-old nephew.
This is First Coast News at 11.
Good evening, I'm Shannon Ogden.
From the information center of First Coast News, your news leader. This is First Coast News at 11. From the information center of First Coast News, this is First Coast News at 5.
Please take a look at this. Gasoline prices increasing right before.
This is First Coast News at 5:30. First for you.
Another first for the Olympics and Team USA today.
This is First Coast News at 7. First for you.
Good evening, I'm Heather Crawford.
From the studios of NBC 12 and ABC 25, this is First Coast News at 6. First at 6.
We're feeling wonderful.
Congresswoman Corinne Brown, indicted on nearly 24 charges in connection with the One Door for Education charity. Tonight, the prison time she could be facing and what it means for her district. Plus, horror in Dallas. We're learning more about the man police say murdered their own, what investigators found in his home, and honoring the lives of fallen officers.
Good evening. A developing story we have been following all day long.
From the studios of NBC 12 and ABC 25, this is First Coast News at 11.
Fans start flooding Jacksonville for the Florida-Georgia festivities.
Go, Dogs! Go,
But will the game stay in the River City for years to come? Plus, rethinking your protein intake. The World Health Organization says red and processed meats may cause cancer. What it means for your meal plan. And later, high water often creeps into businesses in downtown St. Augustine. How the city is dealing with a request for a fast fix.
Good evening. Negotiations to keep the Florida-Georgia game in Jack.
Live from the studios of NBC 12 and ABC 25, this is First Coast News at 5.
Joseph joined the military to serve. That's part of his beliefs as a Christian.
Always on your side. This is First Coast News at 6.
And first at 6, new details on the suspects involved in a deadly crash that...
Right now on First Coast News, college students busted stealing $4 million. Why a Jacksonville lawyer says they shouldn't spend a single day in jail. Plus, another Florida teacher arrested for having sex with a student. Wait until you find out how they got caught. And why a local power company is being ordered to pay back millions to its customers. Before you go to sleep on this Wednesday night, get your latest headlines right now on First Coast News at 11. And we start with breaking news right now. 2 JSO officers are hurt after colliding into each other in the Mixontown area. This all happened at West Beaver Street and Robinson Avenue tonight. Investigators tell us the officers were driving in separate cruisers, responding to a call when another driver failed to yield and caused them to crash into each other. We're told both officers only have minor injuries and will be okay. Well, let's talk about this weather. It is the coldest night of the season. Hopefully you're in your warm.
Right now on First Coast News, a high-rise rescue in downtown Jacksonville. Hear from a survivor and what the heroes do when they're done saving lives.
Plus, the community outraged tonight after a 7-year-old boy was killed in a hail of bullets. Neighbors say they're tired of the violence.
And keeping you safe when you go to worship, what local churches are doing to protect you.
Always on your side. This is First Coast News at 11.
Good evening. A dramatic rescue unfolds on live television tonight. Jacksonville firefighters pulling 2 scaffolding workers who were left dangling outside the set.
This is Good Morning Jacksonville. First Coast News on your side.
Right now on GMJ, more rain on the way, setting up for a slick and soggy Thursday as a cold front settles in on the First Coast.
Hello and welcome to First Coast Living. I'm Jordan Wilkerson.
And I'm Mike Prangley. And a busy night in Jacksonville City Council as lawmakers talk about Confederate monuments and rising gas prices. Everything you need to know next at 11.
And we explain the settlement that has the city throwing thousands of dollars at some Jacksonville strip clubs.
Right now at 11, what happened to William Bloom? It's been 2 years, and to this day, his family is still searching for answers.
Plus, new and heartbreaking details about what happened in the moments before a pilot died after crashing her plane in St. Augustine earlier this month.
And another night of tornado outbreaks across the South. Why we need to keep an eye on this storm system that's moving our way. Thank you for staying up with us tonight at 11. I'm Anthony Austin.
And I'm Heather Crawford. We're going to have those stories in just a moment. But first, tonight's Jacksonville.
Live from First Coast News on your side. This is Good Morning Jacksonville.
As we come on the air here at 4:30, a teenager killed in a crash.
This is First Coast News on your side at noon.
Well, welcome into the noon news broadcast, and this is a First Coast News exclusive. For the first time since the deadly gangway collapse, this is in Sapelo Island, Georgia. We are now hearing from the Jacksonville mother who fell into the water and was separated from her baby. You see that child right there. Goodness gracious, what a story. Thank you for joining us for First Coast News at noon.
You're watching First Coast News on your side.
We want to thank you for joining us tonight for First Coast News at 5:30. I'm Anthony Austin. Jeannie Blaylock will join us in a moment, but first, look at your top stories. Tonight.
This is First Coast News on your side at 6.
Right now at 6, the St. Johns County firefighters recovering from injuries at a...
This is First Coast News on your side at 7.
Developing tonight, a deadly crash is calling it.
This is First Coast News on your side at 11.
And we want to thank you for staying up with us tonight for First Coast News at 11 on this Sunday. I'm Anthony Austin. Riley Phillips has
WTLV NBC 12, a First Coast News station.
You're watching ABC 25, WJXX.